Are we allowed to take the best vampire role-playing game ever made and blend it into the Forgotten Realms, the greatest fantasy setting ever created? Why, yes. Of course we can. This is our game. We can do what we like. Vampire the Masquerade was created by Mark Rain Hagen and published by White Wolf in July 1991. It landed as one of the best-selling tabletop role-playing games of that entire year. It wasn't the first game to let you play the monster instead of hunting it. A smaller game called Nightlife got there 1 year earlier, but it's the one that took that idea and turned it into a genre-defining phenomena. Your character was a predator wrestling with the beast inside them, one bad night away from losing themselves entirely, and that idea alone reshaped what a horror role-playing game could be. More than 3 decades later, it's still going. 5 editions, a card game, video games, novels, comics, even a short-lived television show. A 6th edition was just confirmed this year. The clans you're about to hear named, Ventru, Toreador, Tremere, and the rest, have outlived most of the games that tried to copy them. Speaking of which, one of the most pivotal innovations in Vampire the Masquerade was the clan system itself, and it left a mark on the wider hobby too. When TSR built Planescape in 1994, they gave the city of Sigil 15 ideological factions instead of clans, and by more than one account, that entire structure was a direct response to White Wolf's clan system, an attempt to keep Dungeons & Dragons players from wandering off into the world of darkness. Different game, same idea. Give your players a group to belong to and a philosophy to fight for. So today, we're doing something a little different. We're taking this a step further and placing the vampire clans directly into the Forgotten Realms, adapting them to the unique fantasy lore, of course, but you should be delighted by just how exact the fit can be. And as I go through the list of clans, you'll also learn about a whole lot of known and named vampires from the Forgotten Realms lore. Yes, Ravenloft is cool and everything, but that's just one vampire trapped in a dreaded demiplane. The vampires we're about to learn about are not locked away by the mysterious dark powers. No. They are right there, lurking in the shadows right alongside your player characters, and they have been very active for a very long time. So, settle back, embrace the darkness, fill your chalice with a tasty victim, drink deep and relax. It's time to get deeply nerdy. This is the Clans of Faerun, where Vampire the Masquerade meets the Forgotten Realms. According to the game's original mythology, every vampire descends from a single figure, Cain, the biblical murderer of his own brother, cursed by God and thrown into an immortal blood-drinking exile. Cain eventually grew lonely enough to embrace a child of his own, and that child embraced others in turn. This third generation, 13 of them in total, became known as the Antediluvians, the founders of the 13 original clans. When Cain's city was destroyed by the biblical flood and he wandered off into the world, his own grandchildren turned on their makers and killed them. Cain found out. He cursed each clan with a unique weakness in return, and those curses are still the banes every vampire carries to this day. That clan structure wasn't part of the original game design. It came late, added when playtesters kept struggling to build a character concept from scratch, and it turned out to be one of the most important decisions White Wolf ever made. A clan gives a player an instant identity, a philosophy, a set of strengths, and a built-in floor to roleplay against, and that idea alone is a big part of why the game has survived for more than 3 decades. It's also why the game translated so well into live-action roleplay or LARPing. Mind's Eye Theatre The Masquerade launched in 1993, and it did something the wider LARP hobby hadn't managed before. It pulled in a huge new wave of players, including, by more than one account, a far larger number of women than tabletop gaming had ever seen, and nowhere took that idea further than Scandinavia. Vampire LARPs are widely credited as the root of an entire movement now called Nordic LARP, a distinct, internationally respected style of live roleplay that treats the character, consequence, and immersion as seriously as any piece of theatre. It's had a dedicated conference, Knutpunkt, every year since 1997. White Wolf itself is now owned by a Swedish company. Decades on, official vampire LARPs are still selling out venues across Europe, hundreds of players at a time. Before we get to the clans themselves, there's a real difference worth understanding between how D&D treats vampires and how Vampire the Masquerade does, and it's not the difference I expected going into the research. The common assumption, the one I myself made, is that a D&D vampire is a corpse with the original person gone entirely, replaced by something else wearing their face, dropping the act the moment it gets close enough to strike. That's not actually what the lore supports. Across the editions, the dominant model is that the person doesn't leave. Their soul stays bound to the body, along with their memories, their skills, their languages, their relationships, all of it. What changes is what those things mean to them. Love curdles into obsession and loyalty can curdle into control. The person you knew is still there, but their blood is not just infected, it's cursed. Their passions and most basic desires are twisted, and that's the true horror of it. The Forgotten Realms gives us an unusually clean example of this. Thibault Dwarf Point, Brunor Battlehammer's loyal battle rager dwarf, took a vampire's bite meant for his king and became one himself. It didn't stop being Point. Disorientated at first, the memories came back, and his loyalty to Brunor came back, and so did the horror of what he'd become. And thanks perhaps to his dwarven stoicism and constitution, he spent years fighting his own hunger rather than giving into it. And eventually, through the harpels of Longsaddle, he was cured. He was captured and bound within Wulfgar's magical horn. The horn carried to Longsaddle, and there he was resurrected and cleansed of the curse. Fully. A character in the novel says it plainly. Nobody, not Brunor's clerics, not the wizards of Longsaddle, had ever heard of a cure for vampirism before. Point was the first, at least in that literature. So the honest version of the comparison isn't a soulless monster versus a tormented person. D&D vampires keep their old self, but the game never gave players or DMs a mechanical way to fight for it. The corruption just happens, total, the moment the curse takes hold. Vampire the Masquerade took the opposite approach on purpose. It built the fight into the rules. Humanity is a tracked number. The beast is something you roll against. Losing control is a real mechanical risk every session, not just flavor text on a character sheet. And if the lore feels tangled and contradictory across editions, that's not entirely on the fans for misreading it. The writers themselves never settled on one clean answer and carried it forward consistently. That confusion is baked into the source material as much as it's baked into the fandom, so my bad. Here's the concept driving the rest of this video. D&D already has a mechanic for exactly what we're about to do. It's just never been applied to vampires before. A tiefling's bloodline traces back to a specific archdevil, so it could be Asmodeus, Beelzebul, Mephistopheles, and so on. And that lineage shapes what the tiefling actually is. Their resistances, their magic, their look. A dragonborn works the same way, tied to a specific breed of dragon, red, gold, blue, whatever. And that ancestry defines their breath weapon and their damage resistance and their look. Neither of these are throwaway flavor choices. They're the game's established method for saying a creature's nature comes from who or what they descended from. Every named vampire I've dug up in the research can function as a sire. Any vampire a sire creates is called a child, and the act of creation itself is called the embrace. The child carries the sire's nature forward into whatever they become. Thibault Dwarf Point showed us exactly what it looks like from the inside, a mortal pulled into vampire society and shaped by the one who turned him. Each clan also has 3 signature powers called disciplines, ranked in 5 levels called dots. A first dot in animism might let a vampire calm a snarling dog with a glance. A 5th dot can let them command a stampede. If you want the D&D version of that, think of it less like a spell list and more like a subclass feature track, the kind of thing a Tiefling's Fiendish Legacy or a Warlock's Invocations already do. A fixed set of powers tied to what you are, unlocking further as you grow stronger. So, let's start with the Ventrue. In Vampire the Masquerade, Ventrue are the aristocrats who actually sit on the thrones of vampire society. Their disciplines are dominate, fortitude, and presence, built for command and control. They're also famously, sometimes fatally picky about whose blood they drink, often locked into one narrow type of feeding vessel their entire unlife. Of the known vampires of Faerun, our pick for the sire of Ventrue is Olgar the Undying. He became a vampire in Western Unther before -600 Dale Reckoning, which already puts him among the oldest named vampires anyone's documented in the realms. He was banished to an island in the Pirate Isles that still bears his name, and he stayed there starving until pirates eventually freed him. Centuries without proper feeding drove him half mad. As of the current era, he's still bound to that island by magic he can't break alone, but he's not powerless. The Twisted Rune, a cabal of liches and other undead spellcasters who rule much of southwestern Faerun from the shadows, has been courting him, feeding him a steady supply of victims to restore his sanity in exchange for everything he's learned across 2,000 years. His price for helping them back is simple. He wants off that island, and he wants Chesenta. Picture what a Ventrue court built around Olgar would actually look like. He wouldn't come back swinging a sword. 2,000 years of exile teaches patience, not recklessness. He'd moved through marriages, debts, favours owed by the right nobles, until Chesenta's throne is handed to him by people who've forgotten they ever had a choice in the matter. His children wouldn't be brutes. They'd be ambitious young nobles already circling real power, the kind who'd trade almost anything to actually hold it. And Olgar would simply be the one offering the trade. Here's what that actually looks like at your table. A Ventrue child with Dominate might fix a guard with a single look and have them wave the child through the gate without a second thought, utterly convinced they've done this hundreds of times before. Fortitude lets that same child walk away from a blow that would have dropped them, barely staggering. And presence is the reason a room full of suspicious nobles somehow ends up agreeing with everything the child just proposed, without any of them quite remembering being persuaded. Remember, when I'm saying child, I'm referring to the vampire. It's just Vampire the Masquerade terminology for those who aren't aware. For Brujah, the best matching known vampire on Faerun is Orlak. Brujah are rebels built for a fight, running on celerity, potence, and presence. They're also the clan most prone to frenzy, and their compulsion pushes them to oppose whatever authority is standing in front of them. A ruler, an institution, an idea, it doesn't matter much which. Orlak's whole introduction to the historical record is a single night in -273 Dale Reckoning, when he sacked the city of Westgate at the head of an army of elite mercenaries, solving problems by taking them apart, not building slow influence through favours and marriages. It's exactly what that looks like. Noble houses, guild monopolies, entrenched cabals, none of it is safe if Orlak's the one looking at it. He has no interest in thrones or ruling anything himself, only in breaking whatever currently holds power over the people beneath it. His children would gravitate towards the realm's own existing undercurrents of rebellion, mercenary bands, and the more disposable enforcers. The Zentarum seem to do the dying. Anywhere authority is already fragile, and one hard push could bring it down. Celerity and potence are where Orlak's methods show clearest. A child with potence doesn't need a weapon to put someone through a wall, and by the higher ranks, they're strong enough to bend steel bars or shrug off blows that would kill a mortal outright. Celerity is what makes Orlak's people impossible to pin down in a fight, fast enough to close distance in a blink of an eye, fast enough that a trained soldier's reflexes simply aren't quick enough to track them. Of the known vampires of Faerun, our pick for the sire of Tremere is Shyresa. Tremere run on Auspex, Dominate, and Blood Sorcery, originally mortal magicians who saw vampirism as the immortality they'd already been chasing. They'd still need fresh blood to fuel their rituals, and they can't form the bonds other vampires rely on to trust one another. Their compulsion is perfectionism, repeating an action over and over until it lands exactly right, and the rest of vampire society tends to distrust them for treating blood itself as something to be experimented on. Shyresa is a rune master of the Twisted Rune, the same organisation already courting Olgar for his knowledge. That places her inside one of the most dangerous magical hierarchies in Faerun, and she's unusual even within that. Most of her fellow rune masters are liches. She's a vampire, the outlier among the undying, still working blood magic in a council built almost entirely around magic that abandoned blood for bone centuries ago. The Twisted Rune already does the building for her. Its structure functions like a Tremere pyramid under a different name, a strict hierarchy of spellcasters answering to power above them, and Shyresa doesn't need to invent a new one. Her Chalder would likely be drawn from ambitious mages already circling the organization's edges, people who have already decided magic justifies any cost and are one ritual away from discovering the cost includes their own mortality. Blood sorcery is Tremere's signature, ritual magic paid for in blood instead of components, and Auspex is what makes them dangerous before a fight even starts. Reading a rival's thoughts, seeing through illusions, catching a lie before it's finished being spoken. For Clan Tzimisce, the best known vampire on Faerun is Velioth, called the Martinet. Tzimisce run on animalism, Dominate, and Protean, old-world flesh shapers who treat their territory as an extension of their own body. They're possessive to the point of obsession, alien even by vampire standards, and prone to punishing intrusion on what they consider theirs with a cruelty other clans find genuinely unsettling. Before Khazad Shah ever ruled Baldur's Gate, before he enslaved Astarion, Velioth held that same title of Master Vampire. When Khazad rebelled against him, Velioth's answer was an execution. He'd had Khazad impaled and left that way for 10 years before Khazad finally broke free and killed him outright, seizing the city for himself. A decade of impalement as a punishment for one act of defiance tells you almost everything you need to know about how Velioth ran his domain. This wasn't a ruler who negotiated with rivals or absorbed insult at the cost of holding power. His territory was his body in every sense that mattered to him, and anyone who tested that boundary paid for it in a way meant to be looked at by others for years, by everyone else who might have the same idea. Punish them as an example. Protean is where that possessiveness turns physical. A child with Protean can grow sharp claws enough to draw blood through a grip nothing else can break, or briefly became part of the stone or earth of their own domain, all but invisible to anyone who doesn't already know exactly where to look, so they blend in. For Gangrel, the clan, we actually can't name a sire, nobody wrote one down. Gangrel run on animalism, fortitude, and Protean. They're the wanderers, and they never wanted to take a seat at any court in the first place. They're most at home in the wild, distant from vampire high society, but rather by choice than circumstance, and closer to whatever animal instinct survives their transformation than any other clan. The only known named Gangrel vampire on Faerun is Shulgi, the secret vampire of Mesemprar, and even his own origins fits that clan's whole personality. Whoever turned him is unnamed in the records, remembered only as a bad master who treated him badly enough that Shulgi swore never to sire anyone himself. He kept that vow ever since, so he's never raced another. No other clan on this list could end up with an empty family tree and have it feel like this so correct. A clan built entirely around solitude and wandering doesn't leave behind a family tree for us to follow. It leaves behind exactly one name, no sire, no child, no court, just Shulgi, alone by choice, powerful enough to have built something and refusing to, purely because he remembers what being made into a vampire cost him. For Clan Toreador, the best matching known vampire on Faerun is Jandar Sunstar. Toreador run on Auspex, celerity, and presence. The artists and perfectionists, obsessed with beauty to the point that an ugly enough room could genuinely weaken them. Their whole curse is a fixation, a face, a talent, an idea of what perfect should look like. Chase long after chasing it stops being healthy. Jandar is a gold elf, or a sun elf, from Evermeet itself, and the sourcebooks describe him the way you'd describe a painting rather than a person. Angular striking features, pale gold-skinned, wheat-coloured hair, silver eyes. He was swept away from Faerun entirely in 1098 DR, pulled into the Demiflane of Barovia, yep, that one, and there his sire, a vampire named Cassia, kept him enslaved for over a century. Cassia was vain and elegant himself, the kind of vampire who cared about the cut of his gloves, but he was also cruel enough to force Jandar into acts he never consented to. Jandar resisted anyway for 100 years, trying to survive on animal blood rather than human, until he finally broke free by killing Cassia outright. Beauty forced into ugliness by the very hand that made him, and the thing that finally saved him was refusing for 100 years to stop caring what he'd become. Art and performance would be what draw a court to Jandar, not thrones or armies, anything beautiful enough to be worth obsessing over. Any child who he made would likely share that same unwillingness to fully surrender to the beast, whatever it cost them to keep resisting. For Clan Ravnos, the best matching non-vampire in Faerun is Blood-Curdling Scream. Ravnos is run on animalism, obfuscate, and presence. Wanderers and illusionists who never hold a fixed territory the way a Ventru or a Semitsi would. Nothing about them is meant to be found twice in the same place. Blood-Curdling Scream is a rock gnome vampire and an illusionist, and he doesn't lead a court, he leads a pack. The Blood Screamers are a band of savage weremole gnomes who he commands across the bandit wastes of Helruar. First recorded during the Year of Rogue Dragons in 1373 Dale Reckoning. It's about as far from a throne as this list gets. What Blood-Curdling Scream actually runs is a rumour that keeps changing shape. It's not a bloodline, it's a raid that hits a caravan route and vanishes before anyone can organise a response. Gone by the time word even reaches the nearest city. Any child he made would already know how to disappear, because disappearing is the only thing that's kept the Blood Screamers alive this long. Obfuscate is the reason nobody's caught them yet. A child with that discipline can walk through a crowded market and simply not be noticed. Not hidden exactly, just skipped over by every eye in the room. And by the higher ranks, that same trick works even mid-conversation, even while being looked directly at. For Bantu Hakim, the best non-matching vampire in Faerun is Mars. Banu Hakim run on blood sorcery, celerity, and obfuscate. Judges and serial killers with a real code behind the violence, cursed with a thirst for other vampires' blood, and a habit of weighing everyone they meet for worthiness before they've even decided whether to speak to them. Mass trained as a monk, then an assassin before joining the killing force of the drow city of Merimnidra under House Chulmav. Becoming a vampire only sharpened what she already was, precise, disciplined, fighting unarmed by choice even though she had claws and the strength not to need them. He rose to lead that entire assassin force, and underneath all of it, he was keeping a secret from the very house he served. He abandoned Lolth for Karen Sali, becoming the lover of her second-in-command in the city, and in 1372 DR, during a period the drow called Lolth's Silence, he turned on House Chulmav entirely, joining the coup that tore it down. Mars didn't kill indiscriminately, he didn't switch sides on a whim, he judged House Chulmav over years, the same way Bantu Hakim judged everyone, and only acted once he'd already decided the verdict. A child of his would be selected the same way. Bantu Hakim select every child in the source material, tested for shared values first, embraced second, never the other way around. Blood sorcery lets a child pay for magic in blood instead of components, and celerity is what makes an assassin unstoppable once the verdict's already been reached, closing distances faster than a target can finish drawing a weapon. For Nosferatu, the best matching known vampire in Faerun is Athaketha. Nosferatu run on animalism, obfuscate, and potence. The embrace leaves them hideously disfigured, unable to pass as anything human, which pushes the whole clan into hiding and into the information trade. They know things because nobody's watching for the thing they've become. Athaketha isn't a vampire in the usual sense. She's a vampiric mind flayer, created in an experiment in Blutsburg by the vampire Lissa von Zarovich of Strahd's own bloodline, working alongside the region's High Master Illithid, trying to find a way to turn that master into a vampire as well. The hatchlings that result were meant to be destroyed as failures. Their regeneration let them survive being thrown out instead, and they've been running wild ever since. She can't speak. Ordinary magic or psionic contact risks driving whoever attempts it mad, but other vampire lithids can apparently still read her. Some crude telepathy that no outsider has ever managed to tap into. Monstrous by two separate measures, forced into total concealment by both. Information about her passes through a channel nobody else on Faerun can access at all. Nosferatu's whole condition stacked twice over into one creature. Patient and silent. A child sired by something like Athaketha would function less like a coven and more like a listening post, gathering whatever crosses its path and trading it to whoever can afford not to ask where it came from. Animalism lets them use every rat and stray dog in a city as informants. Potent means when concealment finally fails, whatever's underneath it can put a man down or through a wall without breaking a stride. For Malkavian, the best matching known vampire in Faerun is Yoval. Malkavians run on Auspex, dominate, and obfuscate, carrying a fracture in their minds that never fully heals, paired with a kind of clarity the rest of vampire society genuinely lacks, seeing things that saner creatures miss entirely. Yoval is a vampire flump. That sentence is not a mistake. Flumps are usually gentle, faintly ridiculous creatures under ordinary circumstances, and somewhere in the Underdark near Skullport, one of them stopped being harmless. Yoval drained and killed a vampire that had itself been turned into a rat deep in tunnels nobody was watching closely enough to explain how any of this happened in the first place. There's no clean political read on Yoval the way there is for Olgar or Shiressa. That's rather the point. Malkavian logic was never supposed to make sense from the outside, and a creature this far outside every category vampire society usually sorts itself into fits that description better than a more conventional monster ever could. A small, strange, found family in the Overlooked is what a child of Yoval's would accumulate rather than a court. Other creatures nobody expect to matter, until suddenly one of them says something that turns out to be exactly uncomfortably true. For La Sombra, the best matching known vampire on Faerun is... Oh, Ed, why do you do this to me? Shintlara or Vrindar. La Sombra run on Dominion, Oblivion, and Potence. Shadow magic aristocrats who spend decades as rival factions to the rest of vampire society before finally joining it. Their whole nature is bound up in darkness itself rather than blood magic or animal instinct. Shintlara is the matron mother of House Orvrindar, the fourth house of the Drow city Chednesad, and a cleric of Lolth in good standing on top of being a vampire, which is a contradiction most vampires never have to reconcile. She sits on the city's ruling council and carries a secret limitation even her own daughters don't know about. Only Drow who have already failed the test of Lolth, but haven't yet become Driders, can be turned by her. A narrow window most of her rivals assume doesn't exist at all. That's exactly why they fear a legion from her that she can never actually raise. House Orvrindar already runs exactly like a La Sombra court, rigid, shadow-drenched, and aristocratic drow house with succession built entirely around who gets groomed to inherit. Her childer would be pulled from her own house's rising daughters the same way any matron mother grooms an heir, except now the succession runs through the bite as well as the blade. Oblivion is death and shadow made into a weapon. A child with it can speak to the recently dead as easily as the living, or plunge a room into darkness that only they can see through. For Clan Hecata, the best non-vampire on Faerun is Nyresa Flass. Hecata run on Auspex, Fortitude, and Oblivion, a family of death magic specialists as much as they are a clan. Insular, often functioning more like a crime dynasty than a coven, more interested in commerce and necromancy than open war. Nyresa held one of Thay's 8 Red Wizard Council seats as Zulkir of Necromancy, the position later inherited by a name most people know. Any Realms lore would instantly recognize Zas Tam, a vampire holding a formal, legitimate political power built entirely around death magic is exactly the clan working as intended, not a stretch at all. Which makes her useful for this video specifically is the fall built into her story. She held the seat, then she lost it, and Zas Tam is the one who ended up with it instead. The Hecata bloodline built around Nyresa carries that same built-in tragedy forward. What happens to a family whose entire identity is control over death once the institution they built that control on top of gets taken by someone else? Fortitude keeps a child standing through wounds that would end anyone else, and Oblivion gives them command over corpses and shadow both. Speaking to the recently dead, raising what's left of them, moving through darkness that swallows every other sense in the room. For Ministry, there's no single named vampire on Faerun to point to, and the gap is worth naming honestly rather than papering over, because Ministry, formerly the followers of Set, run on Obfuscate, Presence, and Protean, built entirely around temptation and corruption as a path to what they'd call liberation. Their whole philosophy is stealing devotion that was never theirs to begin with. Set himself gives this clan a foothold in Faerun that doesn't need a name attached to it. He's a real, deeply documented god of the old empires of Milharind, Unther, and Jacinta, and his mythology is built on exactly the same crime Ministry represents. He murdered his own brother out of jealousy, and in 1359 DR, he bound the actual native serpent god Seth, while Seth was weakened and stealing his worshippers outright. Most of them don't even know the switch happened. Nobody's written down what Set's vampires would look like on Faerun. What's more interesting is the potential interaction with Olgar's clan, already spread throughout that same region. The gap is actual answer for Ministry, more interesting left open than filled with invented names. So there you go. I've got a companion document for this that lists all of the different powers, all of the progression. You can build a character, just plug and play it into your campaign. I've got NPC vampire stats as well. It's all ready to go for you in a nice packaged PDF, easy to read, printer friendly. I am AJ Pickett, your Sage of Candlekeep, devourer of dusty books, part-time creature of the night, and master of monsters. As always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon. Blah blah. The creatures of the night. What sweet music they make.